valuable information. Information I wish I knew earlier in life. A little bit about me. So I have about 20 years in the medical field prior to joining this platform. Um, I was living paycheck to paycheck like a lot of us are. And the more I earned, the more I spent. I just couldn't figure out how to get ahead financially. So I know that my story is not only mine, it plagues families from all walks of life. Um, how many people would consider professional athletes to be wealthy? I mean, I always thought they were wealthy. Well, according to a 2009 Sports Illustrated article, 79%, oh, excuse me, 78% of NFL players are either bankrupt or under financial stress within 2 years of retirement. And 60% estimated of NBA players go bankrupt within 5 years. Let's take a look at some famous athletes. I don't know how many of you have heard of Adrian Peterson. My kids talk about Adrian Peterson all the time because he most recently played for the Seattle Seahawks, which is their favorite team. He had a successful 15-year NFL career, um, and he earned over $100 million during his career. However, he mismanaged his wealth. He lived very lavishly, made poor investments. Ultimately, he had to file for bankruptcy after a Houston judge ordered that all his assets be seized in 2024. Um, how about Cheryl Swoops? Very famous, dominated the WNBA, had her own signature shoe line with Nike, had substantial other endorsement money on top of her playing salary, but she lost it all due to poor investment choices and failed business ventures. And of course, one of the most famous ones that we all know of, Dennis Rodman, prominent NBA career. But again, engaged in extravagant lifestyle, reckless spending, gambling, and poor financial decisions. So, does money make you wealthy? Only if you understand how money works, right? So, put an 8 in the chat if you agree that most Americans do not understand how money works. So, what is the importance of financial literacy? If you're like me, you grew up on the side of the poverty language. Go to school, get good grades, get a good job. When you find that good job, keep it. Money is the root of all evil. The rich are robbing the poor. Money doesn't buy happiness. They don't pay much. The rich should pay more taxes, and things have gotten really expensive. So again, from my childhood, I thought we were a typical working class, working middle class family. We had enough to live well. We, lived in a great neighborhood. We took vacations, and I thought, hey, we're great. Um, I was encouraged to go to school and get those good grades, get a, good job. So I went, I got a bachelor's degree in biology and not using it, but that's what I was brainwashed into thinking. Um, the poverty language was just like embedded in everything that I did for my entire life. So now let's look at the other side of this slide here, the wealth language. Go to school, get good grades, and start a business. Again, if you start a business, great. Know how to run that business. Don't be like our NBA and NFL athletes who started businesses and ultimately didn't know how to run them. Um, a good place to start is not necessarily a good place to finish. It's called the corporate ladder, not the corporate bed. Money isn't everything, but it does rank up there with oxygen. I mean, we can't live without money, correct? Um, But money is best exchanged for experiences, not things. I love that saying. Don't work for money, teach your money to work for you, which is exactly what we're going to do tonight. So, what's the difference between the two languages, the poverty language and the wealth language? I think it's mindset. So let's look a little further into this. Famous saying here by Tony Robbins: you're either mastering money or money is mastering you. What does that mean? So financial control is a choice, and without it, money is going to dictate what you can do with your life or what you can do with your life. So you have to shift your mindset from being a consumer in the economy to becoming an owner. And the way that you do that is by becoming an investor. So how do we do all of that? Well, let's first discuss what is the definition of wealth. So as our famous leader, Mr. Suni Samad says, money grows on trees when you realize money itself is the seed and the harvest. So how many of you have ever heard the phrase that money doesn't grow on trees? Put an 8 in the chat if you've heard this phrase before. I heard it growing up. Funny story though, in Hawaii, which is where I was born and raised, we actually have a tree in the backyard that is considered the money tree. It is called the Pleomele hawaiiensis. And as kids, we used it as play currency. So while we're playing store and house and whatever else, that's how we paid for our things. We tear off a leaf from the tree and pay. I wish it was real money, but obviously it's not. So symbolically speaking, I grew up knowing that money grew on trees. But as Suni Samad says, when you realize money itself is the seed and the harvest, then money grows on trees. So let's talk a little bit about this wealth formula. What exactly is the wealth formula? Well, you're going to cultivate your money tree by using this formula. And why is this important? Because I cannot work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, at least not without calling in sick or complaining. So the typical person works 40 hours a week for about 40 years. If you average salary of $50,000 a year in your lifetime, or in that 40 years, you're going to make about $2 million. But what if you had people like Andrew Jackson or Ulysses S. Grant or Benjamin Franklin, who are exemplary employees because they can work 24/7, 365. Therefore, making $2 million in considerably less time than my 40 years. Which one would be more valuable in your mind? The 2 million the 2 million I earned over 40 years, or the 2 million that my extraordinary employees earned in, say, 5 or 10 years or 20 years instead? I think it would be definitely the money that Andrew Jackson's going to make for me. So the wealth formula takes time plus capital plus a rate of return minus inflation minus taxes to get wealth. So we're going to look at this a little bit further by introducing you to my friends, Mr. Start Early and Mr. Start Late. Both of my friends are 25 years young. They work great jobs, and they have about $1,000 a month in disposable income. Well, after learning about the wealth formula, Mr. Start Early decides he's ready to cultivate his money tree. He starts saving $300 a month. As you can see here, $3,600 a year, starting at his 25 years young. So In this example, he's earning 8% interest, which is important in this equation. His $3,600 equal the seeds, and his 8% interest that he's earning is the soil that he's growing these seeds in. Year one goes by, then two, then three, then four. Then we get to year five, year six, and year seven. So he's 31 here, and he is no longer investing money, as you can see. No longer investing money beyond this point, but his money continues to grow. So around the same time, Mr. Start Early and Mr. Start Late run into each other again. After some conversation, Mr. Start Late now decides at age 32, he's going to start to grow his money tree. So first year, he's putting in his $3,600. Every year thereafter, clear up until he is 48 years old, at which point in time, the amount of money accumulated by Mr. Start Early and the amount accumulated by Mr. Start Late is equal at about $130,000. So what's the difference between these two? They're both 48 and they both got $130,000. Well, if we look back at the previous slide here, oops, let me go back. Mr. Start Early contributed a total of about $35,000. Mr. Start Late contributed a total of $61,200. Excuse me. Yeah, $61,200. But because Mr. Start Early understood the wealth formula, and through the power of leveraging time and compound interest, his seeds continued to multiply. As you can see, continue to multiply here without any additional investment. Mr. Start Late had to continue to invest for 16 years to get to the same point that Mr. Start Early invested for 7. So what is rate of return? In this example here, we have 4 29-year-olds with $10,000, and the only difference being is the interest rate here. And by the rule of 72, which states that any interest rate divided into 72 will determine how long it takes for your principal to double. So under the 1% rate of return, it's going to take 72 years for that $10,000 to double to $20,000. Increase that interest rate to 4%, and that $10,000 will double every 18 years. So at age 65, person number 2 has 40,000. At 8% interest, again by the rule of 72, it's going to double every 9 years. So that initial $10,000 investment every 9 years is going to double. So at age 65, this individual is going to have $160,000. And at 10% interest, it's going to double every 7.2 years. So at initial investment at $10,000, at age 65 is now $320,000. However, did you know that the average American is retiring on a 401k or a 403b with only $87,000? And I can vouch for this. I just did a rollover on a friend who worked for UPS for 20 years. And she only had just over $87,000 after 20 years of saving in a 401k. Why is this? Well, because most 29-year-olds get into some kind of financial emergency and they borrow from their 401k. And the first time they do it, it's a legitimate, sincere need. However, a few years down the road, they need some more money again. Um, and it becomes easier to borrow from that 401k. So it becomes a habit. And before you know it, the retirement fund that we set forth initially for becomes an emergency fund, which leaves very little or no money for retirement. So why is it intentional? Why is it important to be intentional on our wealth journey? This right here, selecting the proper interest rate. So how many of you had parents like mine that told you you needed to start a checking account and a savings account at some point in your teens or early, 20s? Put an 8 in the chat if that was you. Exactly. I was told it was the safest way to save my money, so I went ahead and did it. But what does the bank do with our money? As you can see, they tend to invest in bank-owned life insurance, or BOLI. They make money investing the money you put in that savings account. And in return, they do give us a share of their, profits that they see. However, that's typically only 0.02%. I had a savings account that literally gave me like 0.07%, which I thought was fantastic at the time. But do you know what the average interest rate on a cash value life insurance policy has been over the last 20 years? It's been 8 to 10%. So if a bank is investing, such as Bank of America, who holds $24 billion in cash value life insurance, if they're getting 8 to 10% on $24 billion of your money, why aren't they only giving us 0.02%? Not enough. Wells Fargo holds $19 billion in cash value life insurance. JP Morgan at $12 billion, PNC Bank at $10 million, Truist Bank at $7 billion, and the list goes on and on. So why do they do it? Let's talk about how our money grows. Okay. So banks operate on a fixed interest rate, right? That's what they give us. Slow fixed gains. Very, very slow. Okay. Variable interest is another way that your money can grow. And this is based on the stock market. So things go up, things come down. There is a high potential for loss. So, here it goes up. Next thing you know, you've lost more money than you have. And then now you're gaining money. It looks like you're gaining lots and lots of money in this little segment here, but it took you this long to get to your original amount and then make the increase. So if I have $1,000 in the stock market and I lose 10%, and then the stock market, I'll have $900 at that point, right? I've lost about $100 of my $1,000. But then the stock market goes back up by 10%. Oh, everyone thinking, okay, well, I made my money back. Well, not quite, right? You only regain $90 of that $100 that you lost. So you still are shy $10 from what you started with. Not a very safe way to go. Now let's talk about this one on the far right here, indexed. You can see it goes up, it bottoms out. It goes up again, it bottoms out, and so on and so forth. This is very indicative of a indexed universal life policy, where zero floor or zero is my hero. So when the stock market goes up, my money goes up. When the market goes down, I don't lose a penny. My money doesn't really participate in the stock market. It only mimics the market. So if I invest in an index strategy today, We're going to look back retroactively at what the market did exactly 1 year from now. So if the market did 10%, I get an interest credit that accounts for the gains. However, if the market goes down, potentially even down below zero, I lose absolutely nothing, but I don't gain anything either. That is the zero is my hero. That's the best strategy there is out there at this time. So, reading this quote on the bottom here, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is right now. We still have time. So let's talk a little bit about inflation. Are prices going up, or is the value of your dollar going down? Well, let's talk about what causes the value of a dollar to decrease. So we've got high inflation, where you have reduced purchasing power. The price of goods and services rise. Each dollar buys fewer and fewer items, resulting in the lowering of the dollar's value. You could also have an increased money supply, where the Federal Reserve increases the money supply faster than economic growth. That will also result in a weaker dollar. We have lower interest rates, where reduced investment demand. Global investors might take their capital to other currencies offering higher yields, and that subsequently decreases the demand for the dollar. Or we could have what we have kind of experiencing over the last 20, 30 years, where we have large trade and budget deficits, where we're importing more than we're exporting. That puts downward pressure on the dollar's value as well. We've got geopolitical and policy uncertainty. So right now we're experiencing Trump's aggressive tariffs. That can slow growth and lead investors to reassess the outlook of the economy. And that ultimately, again, causes the dollar to decline. What about institutional stability? We got threats to the independence of the Federal Reserve or risks of government shutdown. Hey, we know all about that recently. Lots of government shutdowns in the last little bit. That can undermine global confidence and weaken the dollar's status. So for the last 10 years, the inflation rate has been 2.91%. The value of your dollar decreases annually on an average of 3%. So unless your money is growing at a rate that supersedes the inflation rate, we're going to lose money. So how do we combat that? We have to learn how to strategically place our money. So we've got how our money is taxed. We've got our tax now bucket, which includes our mutual funds, our stocks, CDs, and savings accounts. This is paid for with after-tax money, but it's also taxed on any growth that it does. We then have also the tax-deferred bucket, green bucket. This is going to be paid for with before tax money, and it's going to be taxed again when it's withdrawn in 5, 10, 20, whatever years from now. And that includes stuff like your 401ks, which we're all very familiar with, IRAs, annuities, and 403bs. And then there is the bucket we want to be in, the tax-free retirement bucket. This is after-tax money, so we've already paid taxes on that money, and it's going to grow tax-free. So no double dipping over here. Do you think that your taxes are going to increase or decrease over time? So a year from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now. Put a 1 in the chat if you think it's going to decrease. If you think it's going to increase, put an 8 in the chat. Definitely. It's definitely going to increase, which is why we want to be in this tax-free retirement bucket because taxes are going up. So using the wealth formula, we can strategize what to do with our money. Your greatest asset right now in your life is your ability to produce an income. The second greatest asset is how we're going to protect it. So how do I protect my income from the what ifs? What if I pass away tomorrow? Or I become critically ill? Or I can no longer produce income? What if I lived really well, healthy life, and I've outlived my ability to produce income? Well, that's where utilizing something like the indexed universal life product and using life insurance as an investment tool will come in handy. So again, back to our wealth formula, our equation, we've got time plus capital plus rate of return minus inflation minus taxes equals wealth. So in the example here, this is a real life example of an IUL, which is utilized as an investment account. And oops, I'm gonna go back to that. Sorry about that. And the growth of an investment account is a tax advantaged growth. So according to IRS tax code 7702, money growing in the stock market that is attached to a genuine life insurance policy cannot be classified as gross income and therefore cannot be taxed. Lovely. That's amazing. So unlike our 401k, we can also take money. We can take a loan against our money and avoid taxes and penalties. And the average rate of return right now on a product like this is a 15% average. That is far better than that 0.02% I've been getting in my savings account. So again, the time on this particular policy is 20 years funding period. So we're going to fund this with $156 over 20 years, 156 being the capital. And the rate of return to expect is between 6.42% and 15.8%. So right now it's averaging between 9 and 12%. So on great years, we got 15%. On lesser great years, we get maybe down in the 7 range. Again, tax advantage growth. This is in the far right bucket from the previous slide over here. Tax free. That's where we want to be. And the rate of return is superseding the current inflation rate. Ideal. That's where we want to be. So again, compounding interest. Let's talk about compounding interest. What exactly is compounding interest? It's the interest earned on both the initial principal amount and the accumulated interest from previous periods, which effectively allow you to earn interest on interest. It is what causes savings or investments to grow at an accelerating rate over time rather than in a straight line. How about point-to-point indexing? This is a fixed indexed annuity strategy. It calculates interest based solely on the percentage change of an index, such as the S&P 500. And that's done between 2 specific dates. So as we talked about earlier, from today's date to today's date a year from now. It's usually the start and end of a contract year, and it ignores all the volatility that you will find in those 12 months and capping the gains while providing a zero floor to protect against market losses. So again, zero floor, zero is my hero. So although we're no longer investing in active income, the cash value in this product continues to grow no matter what. How many of you were around during the housing market crash in 2008? If you remember that, put an 8 in the chat for me. Exactly. So I was a real estate agent during that time, and I witnessed firsthand the extremely devastating effects of this housing market crash, um, which was triggered by a bursting of a massive housing bubble, fueled by subprime mortgage lending, loose credit standards, and complex financial products. So as adjustable rate mortgages reset higher and home prices fell, massive defaults led to foreclosure crisis, bank failures, and the Great Recession. And it resulted in over $2 trillion in global economic loss. I watched as many of my agent friends suffered financial hardships because of this, and some of them even endured long legal battles because they got caught in that loose credit standards and that subprime mortgage lending. There was some really fishy things going on then. So there was a mass exodus. A lot of real estate agents left the field because of this fiasco. Since I focused on the bank-owned foreclosure side and the short sale side, I was able to sustain and endure this time frame, but not everyone was that lucky. How about COVID-19 and 2020? Huge deal, right? We had cities that shut down. So with this, the projected loss was between 3.2 and 4.8 trillion dollars over 2 years. Caused sharp increases in unemployment, massive supply chain disruptions, intense inflationary pressures, and it disproportionately affected lower income workers, women, and small businesses, while increasing global poverty for the first time in a generation. So why was this important? Why was it important to discuss these two particular things? Well, it's because if we had had a flex life insurance, index universal life insurance product, we would have been somewhat protected because they did not go down. They still gained. And even on the times when they didn't gain, zero is my hero. So you wouldn't have lost a penny. You might have still held the mass of your money in place. So I know this was a lot of information, and I did kind of go through it a little quickly, but I want to stress that we are licensed financial professionals and we're qualified to work with anyone. And we can customize a strategy that works for everyone. No one policy is identical to another policy. We're all different and we have different needs and different expectations of what our money does for us. We meet with our clients every 3 to 6 months, 12 months to coach and guide them to their financial goals. So if they have very specific needs, we may visit them every 3 months and revise their policies. We may mix and match policies in order to reach their financial goals. But because we're licensed and able to do that, we can successfully help them. So of course now I need to know if you found this information to be valuable, put an 8 in the chat. Excellent. Well, if you did find this information valuable, I encourage you to get back with the person who invited you to the call tonight. And it was absolutely my pleasure to share this information with you all. Thank you so much and have a wonderful night, everyone.
Thank you.
You are welcome, Mr. Samad. All right, good night, everyone.